turned out to be a horrible little globalist operative who says he openly gets orders from Bill Gates, said that publicly. Here he is, not caring what his National Health Service says, not caring what his own scientists say, that you shouldn't give this to children, you shouldn't give people a third round of shots. Here he is calling for it.
You're absolutely right that the priorities now are the older generation going into autumn and winter, and we've always said that there'll be a booster program in September in this month, and we're going ahead with that. What I would also say is 16, 17-year-olds are eligible. They've been approved. They're a very important group for potential transmission, and I would urge everybody, all 16, 17-year-olds, everybody who knows a 16, 17-year-old, I mean, the numbers are coming up very fast now. It's very encouraging to see more and more 16, 17-year-olds taking the jab, but we need to go faster with those. And so get your jab if you're 16 or 17. And then finally, yes, we've done Britain. 88% of everybody over 16 in this country has had a jab. I think 78% have had 2 jabs or some number like that. It's huge success for the program, but there are still some who need that protection, and I just urge everybody who hasn't yet had one, go and get it now.
In late August, InfoWars saw an explosion of orders because our audience understands that the globalists are destabilizing the planet by design and are attempting to cause an economic and financial collapse worldwide. Now, ladies and gentlemen, storable food has always been something that's important to have. It's a checkbox that everybody needs to have taken care of, right along with water filtration, self-defense, and a relationship with God. But now more than ever, you need to get your storable food orders in now. We're ready to ship to you within 24 hours of your order. It's high quality. It's very, very low cost at InfoWarsStore.com, because in the future, you're going to see more food supply shortages, and you're going to see food supply price increases that are already,
including scientists from the independent SAGE group, urging younger children, the government, to look at vaccinating younger children so that they can be better protected. And of course, that is a big tranche of society, children that are now back at school, mixing. So I think there have been many who had expected the rollout to be expanded to those younger age groups, but we now have confirmation that the vaccine is not being recommended by the government's vaccine advisors for children aged between 12 and 15. But they do go on to say that the programme is being extended from what they'd been considered most at-risk children to include children who also have chronic major heart illnesses, lung, kidney, liver and neurological conditions. So that means that about 200,000 more children are going to be invited for vaccines. But the breaking news this afternoon is that children aged between 12 and 15 years old are not being recommended by the government's vaccine advisors to receive the COVID-19 jab.
Yes, indeed, Ali, and we've got some word coming out now from the JCVI that says benefits are insufficient to support this mass vaccination for 12 to 15-year-olds, but those with underlying health conditions will get it. So certainly not across the board, and as you say, there's something of a surprise. So
it's critical to understand that earlier I showed you the Toronto Star, and I showed you the BBC, and I showed you all these headlines about record heart attacks in young people, including teenagers that take the injections in Israel and teenagers that take the injections in Canada, and how these numbers are getting more and more and more and more intense. And now around the world, Australia and France are announcing, we're going to inject your children whether you like it or not. I mean, this is so dystopic, even when their own regulators are saying don't do it. This is a globalist revolution. Because they can get away with this, they've conquered us, ladies and gentlemen. They've broken our will. So here's a very important clip of Dr. Ryan Cole talking about scarring in the hearts of children with microscopic photos through a microscope of their hearts.
Thank you for taking us into the details, because it's super interesting to look at what's actually happening in the cells. The idea of scarring on all these children, we've heard the CDC say exactly that. Well, there were mild cases of myocarditis, and as you've said and other doctors have said, There's no such thing. You are creating scars that will never go away. We have no idea what the long-term implications are of this. Most of these kids go into hospitals. A lot of them athletes that can't compete in sports now. They're on heart medications. For a group, by the way, of individuals that aren't really even at risk for this illness, incredibly high success rate of, and really super low, even symptomatic conditions. I hope that we can have you on again. There's so much to talk about, especially since you're deep in the middle of it. But I want to thank you for being brave. I want to thank you for standing up for science, because that's what I really think is under attack here. Real science is under attack. We've lost, as you said, the principle of science to be more like the French legal system. It is guilty until proven innocent, especially when it's being tested. There should have been the #1 conversation at FDA, not the safety trials done by Pfizer that's trying to put a bow on their products that's going to make them tens of billions of dollars.
This is all incredible information, and I think it's important to put it all together in one place as an archive, day by day, as things unfold, so we can chronicle the criminal activity of the globalists so they'll be held accountable at Nuremberg too, which we must have. It's either us or them, ladies and gentlemen. As the CFR said, this is a world that gets more dystopic, more nightmare by design until we're all dead and the globalists inherit the earth. And I pledge everything I've got, my name, my blood, my sweat, my immortal soul, against these people, and I hope you'll join me as well. So let's go ahead and go to a Tucker Carlson clip. He makes a great point. Illegal aliens can come to this country, and they can have fake IDs. They can come here illegally. They can vote in all the different Democrat jurisdictions illegally. But if you get caught, as a healthcare worker particularly, with a fake vaccine card so you can keep your job, oh, by the way, the illegal aliens come in here and don't have to take shots. The Afghans don't have to, just our military does. Then you get charged with a felony when it's not a law that you've got to do this. In fact, the FBI is trying to claim this as fraud. Everything the government's done is a fraud. The PCR test is a fraud. These injections don't protect you and lower your immune system, make you sick. They're a fraud. So it's like saying Jews having secret papers in Nazi Germany, or Russians having secret papers or fake papers to be able to get around in Soviet Russia were bad. No, these aren't bad people. These are folks that are really who are healthcare workers, who have seen people get sick, who've seen people get very, very ill and die, like the nurse talked about earlier, who's out there marching, and have seen all the hysterectomies and all the cancer. And they admit these vaccines, quote, trigger cancer, but say in the New York Times, it's no big deal. This is just an exercise in madness, an exercise in killing us. If the globalists showed up with tanks and airplanes and machine guns, we'd fight them. But they do it through the medical system and through censorship and through control. So here's Tucker Carlson.
So with that in mind, it was interesting to see this week's big announcement from the District Attorney of New York City, Cyrus Vance. Vance has just charged 13 Americans with felonies for buying fake vaccination cards. Several of the suspects, according to prosecutors, were healthcare workers who've been told by the state they'll be fired unless they get the shot. So politicians telling doctors and nurses what medicine to take. That's exactly what they told us they were against for decades. Again, these are healthcare workers. They know the science of COVID far better than politicians, governors, prosecutors. So in good conscience, they've risked their careers to preserve their right to bodily autonomy, and now they're in jail for that. Now, these arrests will be used to justify digital health passports for the entire American population. That is true. Save this tape. In fact, Cyrus Vance has already enlisted big tech to help root out the disobedient in New York. Quote, we need companies like Facebook to take action to prevent the fraud happening on their platform, Vance said. Making, selling, and purchasing forged vaccination cards are serious crimes with serious public safety consequences. End quote. Except that's a lie. Buying a fake vaccination card is not a, quote, serious crime. It's not even close to a serious crime. Buying a fake vaccination card is an act of desperation by decent, law-abiding Americans who have been forced into a corner by tyrants. You know what's a serious crime? Forcing Americans to take drugs they don't need or want. That's a very serious crime. And let's hope in the end someone is punished for it severely.
And I want to be clear. Those of you watching this live or those of you watching this archive at man.video, you're doing a great job. Many of these reports are getting 2 or 3 million views. It's changing the world. We can beat the globalists. They wouldn't be censoring if this information wasn't having an effect on them. So please, take this report, share it on your email, your text message, by word of mouth, take clips out of it, repost on your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram, your YouTube, and try different things. Leave my name out of the headline, or say, look at this evil conspiracy theorist, and then the AI bots don't see it and it gets through, and millions of other people see it, not just folks who hand out video. But you can reach out to your neighbors, your friends, your family, perfect strangers, and say, listen, you're being lied to. This is a global corporate takeover. They don't want to pay out your Social Security worldwide. They want to kill off the baby boomers. And they've psychologically studied this and prepared this as their takeover. But if people become aware of it, we can stop this dystopia. It's the only future we have. I predicted all this a decade ago. I predicted it all 2 years ago, a year ago. I said what was going to be happening now, word for word. How did I know? It's a globalist program. It's a globalist operation. Now, here's Governor DeSantis, who I think is a good guy overall, who's playing both sides of the field, though. And he's saying, I got the vaccine and all the rest of it, but, if you don't want to get it, that's fine. That's your right. And we shouldn't have vaccine passports. Great. He should just come out against it because it's not a vaccine. But here he is in 2 clips from a press conference, really laying out the facts and the reality of how they're trying to suppress treatments that are basically 100% if they catch you early, like Regeneron. I don't own any stock in Regeneron. I'm not involved with Regeneron. It's been around since the late 80s. It's got a bunch of patents. They have liability. They don't have liability protection. They're the most profitable big pharma company in the world because they've got a lot of great products. For their size, they're the most profitable. They're not selling you Oxycontin. They're not selling you poison vaccines. They don't have liability protection. I like that. And I've got friends and family that were seriously sick, and within just a few hours, 5 to 6 hours, including Joe Rogan, they felt almost completely better. So they're trying to suppress Regeneron, and then after we play these clips, I'm going to come back and get into the war on ivermectin and why that's so important in the latest developments.
Respectfully to them, I would say vaccine passports, one, I'm vaccinated. I'm offended that someone would make me show something just to go to a restaurant or just to live life. And there's a lot of people who've already recovered from COVID who do have immunity. You actually are saying me with a Johnson & Johnson shot can go in, but someone who's recovered from COVID and probably has stronger immunity, they can't go in? I'm sorry, that is anti-science. I also don't want 2 classes of citizens. We have some people in our communities who just made the decision this is something that they're not going to do. So what, you're going to write them out of society? They're not going to be able to go show their face? And some of these places that have vaccine passports, because the little kiddies aren't eligible for vaccine, some of them are saying, if you're under 12, don't even come in. And it's also the case that as much as I am happy to see vaccinated people get good protection against hospitalization and death, and it has been good, the fact is, it is spreading regardless of vaccination. I mean, that's just the reality. The theory behind a vaccine passport is, okay, if you force everyone to have it in order to kind of live in society, then you'll be able to basically just nuke COVID. But we know that that's not the case. Very, very high vaccination rates. You still have big waves. So it just doesn't make any sense. And my view is we got to protect people's ability to live their lives. I don't want a biomedical security state. We're constantly having to do this just to be able to live everyday life. At the end of the day, the vaccines have helped people ward off severe illness, and we obviously work very hard to distribute it. At the end of the day, though, it is it's about your health and whether you want that protection or not. It really doesn't impact me or anyone else. We've seen the data on this, and so the theory behind it, I think, has gone totally up in smoke. And I also just think that there's been huge mistakes made along the way with some of these authorities lecturing people about this. I can tell you, there's a lot of folks that when they hear that, they're on the fence. That pushes them in the other direction. That is not the way that you do it. What I try to do is just give the data. I give it honestly. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to tell somebody something that is not true based on the data just because I want them to behave in a certain way. A lot of these folks, they tell these noble lies because they want you to behave in a certain way, and so they don't give the whole truth. I mean, you look at the fact that we're even having to do this with this early treatment, that should not, we're happy to do it because we want to help. but this should have been something that was screamed from the rooftops from HHS and CDC since last December. Can you imagine if 100% of Americans knew that this was something that was available? You know how many people we would have kept out of the hospital? You know how many people that would not have died over the last 9 months? That's just a fact. And we're obviously correcting that in Florida, and we're actually helping other states too because we've put a lot of emphasis on it. But, you know, I look at that and I wonder, why if you have an effective treatment? I mean, this treatment was used on an experimental basis to the President of the United States in October, and very effectively. Why would you not be talking about it? And I think one of the reasons that some didn't think that they should talk about it is because they didn't want people to think, okay, maybe you don't need to get vaccinated, maybe you just get the treatment. And they worried that people would take that message. And my view is you know, we've never said it's either or. We think that they complement each other. But if someone does do that, that's not a reason to not give them the full information. That's not a reason to provide this, you know, for everybody. So, you know, I think some of the stuff with the vaccine passport, I mean, it's an overreach. It's too intrusive. And at the end of the day, my philosophy is, as governor, my job is to protect your individual freedom. My job is not to protect corporate freedom. That is not what I'm here for. I mean, we have a good business climate, we have everything. But this idea that businesses can just do whatever they want and invade your privacy and doing all that, no, I'm not signing up for that.
Now, I'm going to get to this huge ivermectin story or group of stories in a moment. But first, let's play the wildly unpopular admitted communist mayor of New York City, de Blasio, engaged in the most creepy, cringeworthy garbage I've ever seen. First, he offered free ice creams and hamburgers if you take the experimental shot that's been known to cause cancer and lower your immune system and doesn't protect you. But now, he's gone to the next level. Sell out your health and your whole future to the bullies who say you can't go to a football game or can't go to a movie unless you have a pass that's digital and take Big Pharma's liability protected shot in your body, and you get a comic book on top of it. Maybe they can even bury you with the comic book.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got so caught up in this Marvel comic book. I just didn't realize the press conference had begun. This is amazing. It's limited edition. It's exclusive. It's really special. It's amazing, but you can't just get it anywhere. You can only get it at a vaccination site, the Sumos vaccination site. This is where we're going to help make kids safe and, like the Avengers, fight back against evil. In this case, evil is COVID. I think you figured that out. So here is a great example of an effort to reach our young people with something they care about a lot, reach our families, get people safe, get people vaccinated. Here's one great example, but tomorrow, another great example. The official NBA 2K tournament begins at 11 a.m. Grand prize, Xbox Series X.
Man, that guy is the most disingenuous, fake, evil-looking person I've seen other than Brian Stelter. I mean, I'm not saying Mayor de Blasio is a pedophile. I'm just saying if I was going to cast somebody in a Hollywood movie to play the part of a guy that drives around in an ice cream truck kidnapping children and eating them, it would be him. But instead, he's just eating our freedoms and destroying our souls. Now, let's get to some of the biggest fake news by the corporate media I've ever seen. A good friend of mine who sent me the story had this to say. He said, "We are seeing the implosion of mainstream media in real time." He went on to say, "Imagine being someone who believes this." Because with an image search in minutes, I could find that the image they used was not from there. And with a few phone calls and a few searches, I was easily able to discover that the state north of me, Oklahoma, does not have long lines of ambulances that can't get into the hospital because there's long lines of people sick and dying from ivermectin. It's as big a lie as Fauci a few months ago saying 99% of deaths in the hospitals aren't vaccinated. We went and looked it up. He was using numbers from 2020 before the vaccine was even out. So, of course, all the deaths were from the unvaccinated. I mean, think about that. So here's Rolling Stone. I tracked it back to the local TV station. It's a fake story. And heads up, we're sending reporters up there. Gunshot victims left waiting as horse dewormer overdoses overwhelm Oklahoma doctor says. And they quote this doctor on a local station and said, oh my God, there's long lines. The people with the dewormer thought the ambulances can't get in. I'm tempted to get in my car right now because they list the hospitals and they got the newscast, but they don't show any of this other than foul footage of other places. Remember all the foul footage last year of dummies in the hospitals with ventilators down their throats? Because the hospitals were empty then. And they were lying then and doing all their TikTok videos. The statistics came out. They were counting gunshot wounds, car wrecks as COVID. Now it's real from the vaccinated dying and shedding the live viruses. Just like the majority of polio cases today are from the vaccinated shedding. It's a live virus as well. These are facts. And they're blaming us that haven't taken their shots for what's happening when it's them getting us sick. But I digress. Here it is. Gunshot victims left waiting as horse dewormer overdoses overwhelmed Oklahoma hospitals, says doctor. Well, guess what? Because it is stronger, my family and I actually did take the horse dewormer at the pound per pound it would be for a horse. I used to work for an animal vet for 2 years back in high school. My dad's a physician. And it worked amazingly, even better than getting the human ivermectin, which is the same molecule. I know to the liberals and people, you don't know what molecules mean and things like that, but just it means it's just like horses drink water, we would drink water. And, you know, horses can eat alfalfa, we can eat alfalfa. Or horses can eat wheat, we can eat wheat. Horses breathe oxygen. Like, what are you doing breathing oxygen? That's what horses breathe. So this story is fake and is garbage. But let me show you just scientific information instead of just debating their garbage. Wow. CDC gives incoming refugees Nobel Prize-winning ivermectin from all over the world. It won the Nobel Prize. And if you go to the CDC's own website of the FDA, that on the front page say don't take ivermectin, and you type in ivermectin studies, there's dozens of them from Oxford, England, and Berlin, Germany, and Tokyo, Japan, about it working on SARS, the first one, which is the same virus, Zika, everything else. It's an incredible antiviral. Why do you think Dr. Zelenko up in New York, who has 30,000 patients, treated that many successfully, nobody died, was able to then just go, oh, let's try this? Or quercetin or hydroxychloroquine. It pushes zinc into the cell so the virus can't replicate it. There's a big tweet out on this that links to the NIH, the federal government. Glenn Greenwald linked to it. 44 peer-reviewed ivermectin studies, 39 positive for its use against viruses. So 39 positive out of 5 that are negative. So there you go. But their answer is, oh, the gunshot wounds. It says ambulances are backed up. They can't even get in because there's so many people that are deathly ill. This is gaslighting. This is fake news. And this is a sign of a desperate, collapsing corporate media that was already losing the world. Globalism was in trouble. The big mega banks are far worse than Bernie Madoff with their Ponzi schemes. And so now they want to bring in a permanent martial law, hysterical dystopia where they block regular treatments for viruses, where they don't give you medical care, where they let you die the whole time, posing as your saviors. Now let's start getting into what's unfolding in real time and what the facts are. The White House has come out, and the same thing's happening all over the world, and said, let's get $65 billion to Big Pharma and to contact tracers and make all the major new jobs, millions of people in the U.S., be COVID enforcers and spies. They say remake all of America, and they're saying the same thing in Canada, same thing in Europe, same thing in Australia, that just the whole new economy is COVID and other viruses, and we just can't let one person have the flu or one person have this other thing, even though the vaccines aren't vaccines and are causing the shedding. White House wants $65 billion for Apollo-style pandemic preparedness program. But instead of going to the moon, they take over your body, they take over the hospitals and the contact tracers come to your house. And we're going to get to what's unfolding in Australia and where this World ID system is going right now. Now, everyone is continually asking me over and over and over again, Alex, you must work for the CIA. I mean, how do you know everything before it happens? Number one, the CIA are a bunch of liars. They're told what to say by the globalists. Most of them are compartmentalized and know nothing. Please don't insult me saying I work for the CIA. I work for myself and my family and you doing open source research. Do you understand that I'm going to show you the globalists saying they want to kill you and that they're going to use the fear of COVID to bring in a total collapse of civilization? I'm going to show you all their documents in a moment. This is public. Klaus Schwab, 5 years ago, wrote a book and went on national French television and national German television and said, we're ending the world as we know it. We're getting rid of prosperity. It's bad for the earth. You're going to have a global medical ID that then has a connection to a medical taxing system and a carbon taxing calorie credit where you get so many calories of carbon a day. And they decide how much meat you get, if you can have a car, where you can go. Now, this has now been announced officially in Europe and Australia and Canada. Trudeau announced earlier in the week on Monday that this is really about climate. We're going to have climate lockdowns, London Guardian. So again, that's how I know, because it was in the Rockefeller documents and in Landopoulos documentaries and in stuff they put out 20 years ago and 10 years ago. And I showed all that on Friday's show. If you want to go watch the archive of the show, it was in the first hour. I show you all those documents. But Australia's a year or two ahead of us, so they're already under endless lockdown. They already have to have a phone to leave their house with an app. 5 years in prison if you don't have it. You've got to call the cops when they randomly ping you and show them where you are, even though the phone's tracking you. You get to go outside 1 hour a day if you are injected. They're just total dog training, total enslavement. CDC, so here's America. We're a year behind. CDC, unvaccinated should not travel over Labor Day weekend. And that's getting you ready for when you have the app, which they're rolling out saying, sorry, you can't fly at certain times when you're not vaccinated. So they're just introducing the idea to you. They were announcing that a year ago in Australia, the exact headlines. Look it up. Australian government says unvaccinated may not be able to fly or should not fly. Now they can a year later, okay? Here it is happening all around the world, UN directed. Italy may eventually make COVID vaccine shots compulsory for all. They're just getting you used to it. Home quarantines trials to be launched in South Australia, Premier Stephen Marshall announces, which is the trial for the rest of the world. And what does it say? You'll have, that's abc.net.au. You will all have a phone at all times. It's already being done in the South, most populous area, where most people live. And again, you see them beating people up, arresting them, running over with horses, with cars, if they don't show them their phone, if they don't hold it up and let them scan that. You've seen all those videos. So that's not coming, that's here. Canada's most populous province changes mind, will adopt digital vaccine passports. Apple announces first states signed up to adopt driver's license and state IDs in Apple Wallet. So big tech is becoming the government, merging with the state. And saying they're going to read everything on your phone and watch all your photos as if you're a criminal, guilty until proven innocent. Italy's diocese announces vaccine passports needed to attend church. Talk about Mark of the Beast. Honolulu, restaurants, bars, other businesses to start vaccine passports program by law September 13th. Totally illegal. House of Lords member asks why Brits are forced to take PCR COVID test, which is fake, of course, on returning to the UK, but illegal migrants aren't. And they've got a quarantine, but the illegal aliens don't, because that might dissuade them from coming. Over 80% of culprits responsible for looting after German floods were foreign migrants. Total invasion. California nurse shortage reaches crisis level as vaccine mandate wards off traveling nurses, making the whole health system collapse. It's not the nurses' fault. They're smart. They see what the shots are doing. If they were normal shots and weren't causing as many problems, they would go with them. But again, that causes, again, the breakdown of society, which the globalists want a post-industrial world. Remember, they're trying to wreck stuff. They're not trying to, like, build a big infrastructure and they run it. They want to use infrastructure to kill us. It's in the game. Protesters storm UK drug retailer's office over planned COVID jab for children. This is people understanding how Nazi this is and realizing this is life and death. And the government backed off and said they won't now because of the opposition. Just like all these Apple employees said we have to already give Apple access to our cloud to watch and listen to us. Came out, Berkshire Hathaway's doing the same thing. We don't like this. Exactly. Stop spying on us, Apple employees. Stop helping run death camps in China and find your soul again and realize, even if you're selfish people, this is going to come back on you very quickly. If I'm not safe, if the Uyghurs aren't safe, if the Australians aren't safe, you're not safe, you dumbasses. God almighty. Find your soul. Find your common sense again. Speaking of that, find your soul. So many leftists are pissed that you can't kill a baby after 6 weeks in Texas. They got all these rationales, all these excuses, but it's about killing children. It's about a death cult. It's about their body parts. Well, in Massachusetts and in New York and in other states, they keep babies alive after they're born so they can wait till they get the orders in, sometimes several weeks before harvesting their organs. This is out of the Blaze. Massachusetts Democrat AG rejects petition to protect infants born alive, calling it highly ambiguous and impossible for voters to understand. Oh, we're going to keep babies alive and do whatever we want with them and then kill them because you're too stupid to understand it. Other huge news on the COVID front. And people say to me, hey, this is actually broke 6 months ago. Well, what's old's new? Plus, there's new news on it. Remember the October document that came out in July? Wow, that's really old news. It actually broke months before that. Well, it's new because it's now happened. The CDC's own documents in October, before anybody took these shots, predicted heart attacks, strokes, blood clots, narcolepsy, epilepsy. It's all right here. Go look it up for yourself and then share it because they knew beforehand. So it's one thing to report this, that they knew it was going to happen, but now it's actually happened. And here is the document, not just from some press conference that they were having, where they accidentally flashed this document on screen. It's on the CDC website where it lists all these horrible things it can do to you. It takes 30 minutes to read it. I suggest you go read all the horrible things it can do to you. Give you cancer, death, you name it. Absolutely incredibly important information. The globalists treat you like you're animals. You're not animals. The biggest problem with the general public is they have a short attention span that's been programmed into them, and they kind of just take the world like it's an amusement park that they actually don't really change. They just respond to the stimuli and basically go along with being pre-programmed. You have to decide to be conscious. You have to decide to be engaged. You have to understand that the one thing that separates humans from the animal kingdom is that we're able to control our environment. That we're on a quest to control our environment and to control our own bodies. And you can see what the...
All right. Well, that's it for today. I got to go do some shit. So go check out Alex Jones. The only place I can find him really now is on BitChute or his own website. But I recommend going to BitChute and watching the Bandot video. It seems like he cuts down on a lot of the bullshit advertising. And they just basically have their regular uploads with all the bullshit cut out. So that's what I recommend.